There's still tons of speculation about who the new head coach of the Dallas Stars will be for this upcoming season. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Ryan Chambers of Starcastic Remarks to talk about the potential candidates we could see behind the bench in Dallas next season. All coming up on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, credentialed member of the Stars Media, coming to you on this Thursday, June 9th. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener, thank you for stopping by today's episode and for making Locked On Stars your first listen every single day. Be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform. Remember that we are free and available no matter where or how you listen. Without any further hesitation, let's get into today's episode, a special interview with Ryan Chambers over at Starcastic Remarks, talking about the potential head coaching candidates for the Dallas Stars coming up this season. Have a lot of interesting names on the docket, and we cover it all right now. Well, welcome in, everybody. This is Dane Lewis, joined now by one of the hosts of the Starcastic Remarks podcast. He's been on the show before, friend of the show, fellow Dallas Stars enthusiast. Ryan Chambers joins the show today. And Ryan, we're here to talk about the coaching vacancy for the Dallas Stars. And obviously there's a lot to talk about with who could be the new head coach starting this coming season. But I kind of want to start the show off by asking, what was your kind of initial reaction to Rick Bowness essentially getting fired, stepping down, whatever you want to call it? Because I know a lot of people felt pretty positive about it, but we're kind of just like the man himself, Rick Bowness. You know, everything checks off there. But just as far as the coach of the Dallas Stars didn't seem like the right fit, what was your initial reaction to Rick Bowness no longer being the head coach of the Dallas Stars?
Kind of mixed reactions, to be totally honest with you. More and not. I mean, let's just be honest here. First off, it's never a fun thing when someone loses their job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or doesn't get their contract renewed, or however you look at it, like you said. But it made me hopeful, and it got me a little bit excited because I've been thinking about this over the past couple of weeks, in the fact that I think the new core of the Dallas Stars is here. I think it's here, and there's a couple more players that are coming up that I think could be a possible member of that core as well. And the core I'm talking about, obviously, is Hintz, Robertson, Heiskanen, Otter. That's the new core. I think the old core, Benn, Seguin, Klingberg, and insert goalie's name here, I think that's a foregone conclusion. I still think they're an important part of the team, but I think this new core is here. So with him either not getting renewed or whatever it was, it led me to believe that Nil is finally starting to understand the direction of this team. This team is in a weird flux. It's got some guys who have underperformed with their contracts, but it's also got a ton of young guys who are really starting to produce, who are really starting to bloom in, really starting to show that these guys are really big members of the Dallas Stars going forward, now and in the future. So I love everything that Rick Bowness did for us. I think he was the right guy at the right time. With COVID happening and everything like that, he was the right guy to fill in when Monty left, when Monty was legitly fired. And I appreciate everything that he did for this team and for this organization. And you can talk to anybody across the league that is in, constant contact with him, that he's one of the most gentlemanly players and former players and current coaches, in the entire NHL. So he's just a fantastic guy. But again, my reaction to all of this was, it's sad to see him go, but I'm also hopeful and excited for the future.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I think that was kind of the general reaction from, I would say, 99% of Stars fans and even other people covering the team is, great guy, you don't coach as long as he does without, being a really stand-up guy, a gentleman, a guy that treats everyone with respect, from players to members of the media to fans. And I know even this past year, I think he set the new record for games coached in the NHL. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him behind another team's bench this season, whether it's a head coaching gig, an assistant coaching gig. But yeah, I mean, he did a ton for the Stars, and given the circumstances he had to coach in with, another coach being fired, COVID, snowstorms in 2021. I mean, just so much thrown his way. I feel like all things considered, he did about the best that he could. And 2 wins shy of winning the Stanley Cup is not bad at all. But, now we do know, like you said, that Jim Nill has moved on from him. And we kind of have this new era of Dallas Stars hockey in this weird transitional state where some of the new pieces are here. But you even look down at the prospect level, and there's a lot of guys that we can really get excited about and, have a lot of optimism as they kind of take that next step from their junior club teams to the AHL, the NHL, wherever they land next. And one of the biggest names, obviously, is Wyatt Johnston, who's currently playing for the Windsor Spitfires up in the OHL. And one of the biggest coaching candidates, I think, for the Dallas Stars that's emerged recently is attached to Johnston with Marc Savard, who, former NHL player, current coach of the Windsor Spitfires right now. And I know that you and I both have been a little bit active on Twitter saying that there's a lot of steam picking up for him to be the next guy for the Dallas Stars. And so what are kind of your thoughts on Savard as a head coach? I mean, he played with the Boston Bruins with Tyler Seguin. They won the Stanley Cup together in 2011. So there's that connection there, but also he has a connection to the Boston organization as a whole. So do you legitimately think there's a good chance he could be the Dallas Stars coach? Would you want to see it, or do you think that he goes elsewhere?
I would have been more confident about it like 2 or 3 days ago, to be honest with you, because obviously with the whole Boston Bruins thing, that's blown up Twitter as it is now with the firing of Bruce Cassidy. But, I started to take a look at it when that whole Boston thing kind of exploded, Bruce Cassidy being gone, the possibility of David Pastrnak being traded. That's insane. But I kind of made me worried that he would be my pick. Let me just say that straight out. I would love Marc Savard to be here. And I think that when it's all said and done, he's the best possible candidate for the Stars. It just makes a lot of sense. There's connections there, all that sort of thing. But when I was looking at the whole Boston Bruins thing, there's people are saying, oh, well, now he's going to go to Boston. And I thought about that, and I was just like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're Marc Savard, if you want to take your first NHL head coaching gig in Boston. And let me explain that a little bit, because when you look at the Boston lineup right now, they've got, holy crap, injuries galore with Grzelcyk, with McAvoy, with Bergeron, or not Bergeron, Marchand. And then the fact that, Patrice Bergeron, who just won the Selke, is, contemplating retiring.
Mm-hmm.
That's a situation that a brand new head coach that's outside of this coaching carousel, as we talk about, that's a situation that he wants to go into. I mean, if I was Marc Savard, I wouldn't want to go into a situation like that. I mean, it makes sense why, because he's obviously a former Boston Bruins player and stuff like that. But if you really want to make a mark in the NHL, you want to continue your career as a head coach, it makes way more sense for Marc Savard to come to the Dallas Stars. Because obviously, like you mentioned, he's got the connection with Tyler Seguin. Tyler Seguin won the Cup when he was like in his second year or rookie year. I forget, one of the two. He was very young. And he was a very big member of that team. And unfortunately for Marc Savard, his career was cut short because of injuries. But you've also got Rich Peverley, which I'm sure that he's probably talking to Rich Peverley as well about maybe becoming the head coach here. I mean, that's another connection. And for those of you that don't remember who Rich Peverley is, he was infamously basically died on the bench many years ago and was basically resurrected back behind the bench. And he is now the director of player development for the Stars. So I'm sure that connection there is very important as well. And when you look at the team, obviously you've got Wyatt Johnston as well, who he's currently coaching. And if I'm, Marc Savard, I'm looking to make that jump, and, Wyatt Johnston looks like he's almost ready to make that jump. I mean, why not? And the thing I love about Marc Savard is that he will be able to be the perfect coach for this team, because we have to have Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn perform better than they have the past couple of years with I mean, they're almost, I think, 23% of the cap right now. It's
Mhm.
a lot of money, and they're not performing to where we need them. I mean, at the very least, we need them to get 20 goals, 60 points. That's my bare minimum that I'm asking from the two of them. And I believe Marc Savard can get the best out of those two guys, out of those veterans, especially Seguin. And then he's perfect because we have a bunch of young guys coming up, like you mentioned, Wyatt Johnston being one of them, but we've also got Logan Stankoven in the WHL, and we've also got Maverick Bork in the QMJHL, which for those of you that don't know, those are like the Canadian major junior leagues, like the really young teenagers who are some of the best prospects in Canada. And he's already shown with his team that he's currently coaching, with the Windsor Spitfires, that he can take them deep in the playoffs. And I mean, that's again another checkbox for both Nil and for Marc Savard, where it just makes more sense for him to come to Dallas rather than to go to Boston. So that's a lot, kind of tied into a bow. I'm just really excited about the prospect of seeing Marc Savard as the head coach of the Dallas Stars.
Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at Athletic Greens and their product AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Tons of people take some sort of multivitamin, but it's important to choose one with high-quality ingredients that your body will actually absorb. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's one thing you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. It's cheaper than getting all the different supplements yourself, and you're investing in an all-in-one natural nutritional insurance. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Hey, Stars fans, Dane here. We have an important favor to ask you. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast better than ever. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thank you guys so much for your help. Now let's get back to today's episode. Yeah, I think that was all really well said. And even going back to the argument of, do you want to go to Boston for your first coaching gig? Not only is, there's that whole expectation of, okay, he played here, won a cup here, but I think just Boston in general, whether it's hockey or a different sport, it's such a more difficult sports city to navigate as a new coach. Whereas I feel like in Dallas, a lot of those cities up in the Northeast get that reputation of tough media, tough fan bases like New York, Philadelphia, Boston, because they take their sports so seriously. And that's not to say that Dallas doesn't do it, but there's just that aspect of, I think Dallas would be a lot easier on him if there's not instant success out of the gate. Whereas if the Bruins come out flat and lose, 7 of their first 10 games, there's not going to be a whole lot of grace from the fans, and even the media is going to be a lot more relentless asking him questions about when's the team going to get better, when's the team going to do X, Y, Z. So I agree with you there. I think Dallas is a lot safer of an option to get your NHL head coaching career started. And then, of course, like you said, all of his connections here in Dallas. And then, of course, if he does want to stick with Wyatt Johnston, who has 124 points this season in the OHL. I think he has 37 playoff points right now. They're still in the middle of their, it's insane. In the middle of their series for, I think it's the OHL championship, like they're the equivalent of their Stanley Cup finals. I don't follow the OHL as closely as I do the NHL, but from what I can tell, for a kid who's 19 years old, 18 years old in Johnston, that's pretty impressive. So I think it'd be wise of him to stick with Johnston, which it looks like, obviously a first round pick that Johnston would eventually make his way to the NHL level. So, I too am fascinated by the idea of him coming, and really up until the past few days had never considered him as an option with, so many other big names on the, kind of the coaching market of guys who have been let go from their teams or stepped down from their roles. And I mean, like Pete DeBoer, Barry Trotz. I mean, these are guys who have had some success here in the NHL, and whether it's those names or either, some other names that of, who are some other interesting coaching prospects in your mind that maybe don't necessarily want to see as the head coach of the Dallas Stars, but you could see the Stars pursuing?
That's a very good question. I really wish Jim Montgomery could be a possibility for the Dallas Stars, because I think he would be a good fit. But I just think with his personal relationship with the organization, he kind of destroyed all the ties there, which is extremely unfortunate, because I think he will be a good head coach. He's already getting considered for other vacancies across the NHL. So I hope for his sake, that he gets a good place. I wish the Stars would, maybe look into that, but I just don't see it. Jim Nill he's a very character-based guy. He likes guys who have a lot of character, a lot of moral upbringing. And but I'm still hesitant on a couple of those names that you mentioned. And that's why I'm kind of really focused in on Savard the whole point, because when you look at some of these other guys, when you look at a lot of people today are saying, "Oh, go get Bruce Cassidy, go get it now. He's got Boston ties, just like Marc Savard. He can with Seguin and blah 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 blah." And there were some articles that came out today that some of it looked like, and this is pure speculation here. Okay, so this is not me knowing something that other people don't, but it sounds like in the player interviews, that some of the exit interviews for the players, that there were some players who were not happy with Bruce Cassidy as a coach. And it appeared to Cam Neely, who runs the team, the president of the Boston Bruins, that he had kind of lost some of the players. And that's a huge red flag for me right there. Whether it's true or not, where there's smoke, there's fire. And as a Dallas Stars head coach, I do not want that for my head coach. So that's why I'm a little iffy about Bruce Cassidy. You mentioned Pete DeBoer. Pete DeBoer has a great system, in my opinion. I love the way that his teams have played in the past, San Jose and Vegas most recently. But the thing that I absolutely hate is his whole relationship with Robin Lehner. And now I know Robin Lehner is very different from Jake Ottinger. Very, very different. But the fact that relationship soured over the course of the playoffs is again another red flag for me as to why I probably wouldn't want Pete DeBoer. And I mean, Jake Ottinger is just such a great guy, and I just I don't think that relationship would work out, and I wouldn't want to put Jake Ottinger in that situation. The only other one that I would really maybe want out of the ones you mentioned was Barry Trotz. Barry Trotz is a very defensive first guy. I know a lot of people say that he loves grizzled veterans. He's very similar to Rick Bowness, but he's still willing to give those young guys a chance to play. And I just don't think that he is as on that whole veteran thing like Rick Bowness was, if that makes any sense. We complained about Rick Bowness with the fact, oh, well, you never give any of the young guys chances, and the young guys are afraid to make mistakes because then they know they're going to get benched, and it's specific reference to Gary Onoff. So, but if it's not Marc Savard, I would probably lean towards Barry Trotz more than anybody. But there's a couple of other names on that list too that we've seen kind of running across Star social media that I would also consider too.
Today's episode of Locked On Stars is also brought to you by Built Bar. Don't you love a chewy chocolate brownie or a caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top? So delicious. One of the best desserts in the world is a good brownie. But what if I told you that you can have that chewy, chocolatey deliciousness plus 17 grams of protein? Well, you're in luck, because caramel brownie bars are available at built.com right now. And you've got to act fast because they're a fan favorite and they will go quickly. Forget about dessert. These are so much better than a dessert. Plus, the macros are unreal. 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of sugar. The best part? Caramel brownie bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. With Built Bar, you don't have to sacrifice tasty for healthy. You can have the best of both worlds. Go to Built.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order at Built.com. Yeah, all of those very interesting in their own right. And you mentioned Jim Montgomery. It's funny, the list that I sent out this morning that was sent to me by BetOnline, which is the sports book that Locked On Podcast Network uses. It actually had Jim Montgomery on that list at 9-1 odds, which I'm not a huge betting person, so the terminology is a little bit loose in my mind, but I looked it up, and that's about a 10% chance. So again, like you said, not a huge chance that Jim Montgomery comes back, but he was on that list. So someone out there thinks that there's at least a small chance. And the only other name on there that really caught my eye, just because it's a very recognizable Dallas Stars name, was Jiri Lehtinen, who obviously won the Selke Trophy several times with the Dallas Stars, has his number retired at the AAC, GM of the Finnish national team right now. So obviously played a part in, I know Finland just won, I can't even remember the name of the tournament. There's so many different tournaments out there, but
World
Miro
Championships.
Heiskanen,
Yeah.
yes, World Championships. Miro Heiskanen, Esa Lindell on that team. So obviously he's still very involved in the hockey world, but it's kind of going back, at least for me, on the situation of first-time head coach in the NHL. I don't know if Lehtinen just coming in and being, the head coach of the Dallas Stars, the franchise he played for pretty much his entire career. I mean, if things go wrong, then there's kind of a soured legacy there. But there's that risk that things go well, but you just never know. So, that's an interesting name on there as well. But all in all, I'm just ready to get that new head coach in here, just because once we kind of have that system established, I think then you can really say, okay, here's, some free agents we want to go after. Here's some guys that we could potentially trade for. And you kind of get that more clear picture of what the roster can look like. And obviously, we know Denis Gurianov is coming back for at least one more season, which I'm excited for him to get, at least one more fresh opportunity with this team. Who are some other guys, maybe in your eyes, that you're excited to see maybe under a new system with a new head coach here in Dallas?
I got to jump on the bandwagon with what you said, because Denis Gurianov, that's going to be a big one. That's going to be absolutely huge. He signed, he basically signed his qualifying offer yesterday. And I think it's great for the Stars. It's also great for him because he gets, I said this on Twitter a bunch as well, as I think this is his last chance. As a Dallas Stars member, I think this is his last chance to really solidify himself as a top 6 guy, which is, when they drafted him, that's what it looked like he was going to be. He was a number 12 pick back in 2016, I think, or 2015, one of the two.
Yeah, 2015.
2015.
The McDavid draft, yeah.
Right. And, yeah, I'm just really excited for him. I could totally see him with a brand new coaching staff getting 20 goals. I mean, that would be, I posted on Twitter earlier, and I was just asking, Twitter, Facebook, or whatever. It's like, what would be like the expectation for Gurianov this upcoming season? And I was expecting, probably some low numbers like 10, 15 goals. And a lot of people were saying, no, he can get 20, 25 plus. So I'm really excited for him. I'm also really excited for Miro Heiskanen too, because I think the defensive structure of Bonus's system, which as effective as it was, I think it really stifled the offense of a lot of players. And Miro in particular. I really, 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 really hope that they move him to his strong side, because a lot of the past couple of seasons he's been playing on his weak side, and we saw in the World Championships. I don't know if you got to see any highlights or anything of the games or such like that, but it was very, very, very effective on the opposite side, on his strong side. So I'm hoping that the new coach, whoever it may be, comes in and puts him on a strong side. But the one I'm most excited for is, I guess I'll just put them both together because they need to be put together. Seguin and Benn. That's who I'm most excited for, player-wise, when it comes to a new head coach. Because if we can just get those guys going, and if that first line can just keep the same pace that they've been, and I think they'll be fine. That first line's going to be fine. But if we can get that second line solidified and get a combination of those two guys, or maybe Dennis Garionov can finally start blasting from the sidewall on the power play, or if one of those three guys that we've been talking about in our prospect system can maybe get on that second line with those two guys and give them like a little bit of a youthful energy to push them to keep going. Because I don't think that this is the end of Jamie Benn in particular. Tyler Seguin didn't score a bunch of Tyler Seguin-esque goals. He scored a lot of dirty goals, so he was still there. I think he had 27 on the year or something like that.
Yeah,
25 plus.
so.
It wasn't quite 30, but it was over 25. And but just with Ben, there's more there. There's definitely more there. And when you look at players who are his age or older, you would expect Ben to be able to produce at those levels. I mean, you've got Bergeron who's still doing it. You got Marchand who's 34, he's still doing it. You've got, I mean, for Christ's sake, Joe Pavelski at the age of 37 who had his best career season. Yeah, he's slower. Yeah, he's not scoring a bunch of goals, but he's playing with two guys who really trust him, who he knows where they're going to be. And I really don't think that this is the end of Jamie Benn as we know it. I know a lot of people are writing him off and say, oh, he's a fourth liner now. And he'll be great as when his contract is over, we'll sign him back for a fourth line role. I don't think that's the case. I think he's going to have a huge, giant, momentous bounce back season with whoever we get. And I'm just really excited for Jamie Benn in that particular category.
Yeah, I am as well. I've even just talking about Jamie Benn this offseason, still, have that optimism. And really, we are kind of forced to have this optimism about him because he's making all this money. And I think, even if the offensive numbers aren't quite to the standard that we want, I think he can still find ways to contribute to this team. I mean, I think even this year, we saw him really step into kind of an enforcer role where he's, not looking to draw a fight every single game. But if, someone's going after his teammates, there's a game in particular, I think it was against the Winnipeg Jets, where someone went after Jacob Peterson and Jamie Benn took exception to it and, got into a fight. I think he had a Gordie Howe hat trick that game, an assist, goal, and then the fight recorded. And so I think, he kind of embraced that role. And even if it's just being, a little bit more of a guy that does a lot of hard checks, if he adds that to his game, adds a little bit more of a defensive aspect to his game, I think you can, say that we're getting more out of Jamie Benn if he's able to add to that, as well as maybe finding his stride again offensively. And, there was a lot of things this past season that I think were out of his control, with the second line constantly changing of who was there, who wasn't there. And hopefully, like you said, with the new coach, we'll see a reemergence of Jamie Benn and see him maybe not ever return to his Art Ross trophy winning form, but somewhere in that range where, like you said, he and Tyler Seguin can combine for 60 points or get somewhere in that range. And yeah, I'm excited to see how the roster as a whole responds to a new head coach and what that means for other guys on the roster who we don't know their future. John Klingberg's still kind of up in the air of whether or not he leaves or stays. And I'm curious to see what his decision will be, whether it's before we get a coach or not. But all in all, kind of an exciting time to be a Dallas Stars fan. I think even just including this playoff run, I think there was a lot of people that didn't expect us to make the playoffs. And then we take Calgary to 7 games, and we now know that we have our goaltender of the future in Jake Ottinger. So a lot to be excited about in Dallas. But Ryan, before we go, just kind of some general hockey talk, something I like to ask guests when they come on this time of year. We're getting close to the end of the hockey season. Obviously, the West is set for the Stanley Cup Finals with Colorado, but in the East, we have a 2-2 series with New York and Tampa Bay. What are kind of your final thoughts down this final stretch of the season? Who do you think wins the East? And then ultimately, who do you think takes home the cup?
I hate to say it because I'm rooting against them, but it's gonna be Tampa Bay again. I just don't see it how they can't win it again. And there's a lot of people on social media, and not just Twitter, but that were saying when the Rangers were up 2-0, they were saying, "Oh, this is it. This is the fall of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and this is the beginning of New York Rangers dominance." And I'm just like, just wait until the Tampa Bay Lightning go home, because they're the Tampa Bay Lightning. You cannot count them out right now. You cannot count them out. And then, of course, they win the next 2 games, and then they slaughtered the Rangers in Game 4. Game 3 was a little more even, but Game 4 they shut it down, and they played a defensive style of game. They showed that they know they can play different ways, and they can get the power play goal at the right time. They can get the goal. I mean, they've done it twice in I think it was one of their past series and in this series where they scored in the last minute of the third period to take the lead. So they just have that clutch gene that no other team in, I would maybe even say sports in general, have right now. And the reason why I think they will win in 7, I think it's going to require 7 games. Rangers are going to push them, but I still think Tampa Bay wins. And then when it comes to the Stanley Cup final, I'm looking at one category and one category alone when it comes to that series, and it's goaltending. I mean, Vasilevsky, he's looked a little shakier this playoff series or this playoff season than he has in the previous 2, but he's still come up with astronomical numbers and amazing numbers and great saves and great performances. And I'm sorry, as much as I love Pavel Francouz, who's the backup for Colorado, I mean, I just don't see it, or even Kemper. If Kemper is healthy, let's just assume Kemper is healthy. I just don't see how they will be able to outduel and outplay Andrei Vasilevsky. And I even said that in that first round series against whoever they played, where he was looking really, really timid. He did not look very good. And then what did he do? He responded with like 3 games where he was just like a .978 save percentage or something like that. It was stupid. So as much as I hate to say it, and I'm still rooting against him, but I think Tampa Bay is going to be it. Tampa Bay is going to beat the Rangers in 7, and then I think it's going to take 6 to beat the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, with every passing day, I'm starting to slowly lean that way. Of it just feels inevitable that they're going to get the three-peat, and but even on the other side, I mean, it's not great for Dallas Stars fans to see a division rival in Colorado lift the cup, but I feel like that's what I would rather see. And yeah, just in my mind, just seeing how they absolutely dismantled the Oilers, which Mike Smith and Andrei Vasilevsky, that's apples and oranges right there. I mean, not even comparable. But yeah, that Colorado offense is spectacular. And obviously now they're without Nazem Kadri, but I mean, McKinnon, Makar is what Connor McDavid is to the offensive side of the ice. I mean, Cale Makar is that to the defenseman position. I mean, Landeskog, Rantanen. I mean, they just have so much talent. But yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, neither goaltender for Colorado is even touching, in the zone Vasilevsky playoff numbers. So I'm curious to see how it shapes out. I know the Rangers have somewhat overachieved this season, but they still, have a shot. And anytime they're at MSG, they seem like a different team. And so that gives me optimism that they can rally and at least win their 2 home games. And, if possible, they can even steal one in Tampa Bay in Game 6. So I'm excited for the Stanley Cup Finals to finally be here, even though it does mean the end of hockey season. But Ryan, this is the end of the show, but thank you again for stopping by today and giving us your thoughts on the head coaching options for the Dallas Stars. And of course, we'll have you back on this offseason. Then, of course, once the season gets going as well. And if there's anything you'd like to promote your show or anything else that you guys are working on, now is a great time to do it for the listeners here.
Right. So actually, this is a really fun project. I can't believe I had an amazing idea, but I had an amazing idea. During the playoffs, and me and my brothers were talking about this, and we're like, we love to talk about how we came into hockey and why we love hockey and how it all started. And then I kind of thought about, well, what if we talked to other Dallas Stars fans, just across the board, whoever, and just see like how they became to love hockey and to love the Dallas Stars. So we've actually gone out and started a project called Stars Fan Stories, where we're doing exactly that. We've interviewed Matt Day, who if you never heard of him, he's the guy that wears the Mandalorian gear at Stars home games. So he was a fantastic interview. And then we also talked to the 2022 Dallas Stars Fan of the Year, Mullet Mike, which is Mike Antoine, and he was a really good interview as well. So we've got a lot of content for that coming up. I think I have about 8 interviews set up now. So this is a continuing series. I'm really excited about this, and I hope you guys can go check those out. Matt Day and Mullet Mike, the interviews are already out, so you can go check that out on our podcast feed. And of course, you can always follow our Twitter handle here is at StarcasticR, and you can follow my personal account at rchambers1993 as well. So, and Dane, thanks again for having me on, man. I really appreciate this. I love talking Dallas Stars hockey with just about anybody and everybody. So this was a very cool blessing, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for hopping on. And yeah, that fan series sounds really awesome. And I'll definitely have to go check out those myself because I'm the same way. I love to hear how people, fell in love with the sports teams that they follow. And, there's always a unique story attached to every fan. So listeners, be sure to go check that out. I'm sure it's exciting and, really insightful to get some insight on how other people fell in love with the Dallas Stars. But Ryan, again, thank you so much. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode with Ryan. They do fantastic work over there at Starcastic Remarks. Be sure to go check their show out. Check them out on social media if you need more Dallas Stars content in your life, which we all do at certain times in our life. So be sure to check out their show. They do fantastic work. Thank you again to Ryan for hopping on today's episode. Guys, thank you for tuning in and making Locked On Stars your first listen today. Be sure to check out the Locked On NHL podcast for your second listen. They continue to cover the Stanley Cup playoffs all the way up until the final horn in the Stanley Cup finals. Be sure to subscribe to our show, the Locked On Stars podcast, wherever you get your podcast at, whether that's on YouTube, your favorite podcasting platform. Leave a comment, a rating, or a review if you like what you hear. It surely does help out the show a ton. You can find and follow me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis and our show as well at Locked On Stars. Thank you guys so much for the continued support. We'll see you back here tomorrow.